Griffin, and I am born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I grew up in poverty. What that looks like is I grew up in Cotter Homes projects, and I grew up in Iroquois projects, um, where, sometimes you just don't know where your next meal is going to come from. Um, but there was community, right? Uh, we had some resources at the community center and took advantage of those. We went, which prompted me to be in like every sport imaginable. Um, Went to Martin Luther King Elementary School, went to Southern Middle, and then later on Stewart Middle. Then we moved to the west end of Louisville. And so out of the projects, I was about maybe 12 or 13, but prior to that, we moved to Covington and then came back because we helped our grandfather. Projects there too. Came back, went to the West End.
What was the transition like going from the projects to the West End?
I had to end up switching from 7th to 8th grade. So I was at Southern Middle 8th grade and then transitioned from Southern to Stewart, and that was a huge transition for me. Even though we was in 8th grade and in Southern Middle, there was a lot of drug activity going on in school. There was a lot of violence going on in school. There was just a whole lot of everything. And then to transition to this very controlled environment was completely mind-blowing, intimidating, and I felt like I was ignorant, simply because the things that they were teaching I was unfamiliar with. So I struggled a lot. But then I started hanging around these two guys, Doug and Andre. I remember like it was yesterday. They were like home. They were very familiar. So they was ripping and running the hallways as I was too. And I'm right behind them, and those was my buddies. And then I remember one teacher in particular. I remember Andre was running down the hall, Doug was running down the hall, and I'm right there behind him, and she literally snatched me by my collar. Like, she snatched me by my collar, stopped me, and got in my face and was like, "You are not to hang out with them," and took me in her classroom. She started putting me in programs. She put me in a SCAT program. She put me in a STEM program. She had me doing the morning announcements. She had me doing all of these things, and I had zero control. With my mom working and raising 4 kids, it was like I didn't have any support. And she was that person to be like, "I'm going to support you. I'm going to show you what it looks like. And I'm going to be your mother, your teacher. I'm going to be anything that you need me to be." But she did it all without saying. And like I said, it impacted me to this day. Everything that this woman put into me transitioned right over to high school. So here I am. I'll be 39 in July. Old, right? And that impact is still there. And it has transformed into my parenting,
Was your father not always around?
Was never around. So we had different fathers. So my oldest brother, he had a different dad. My sister and my other brother, they had the same dad. So they had the same mom and dad. And then there was me, and I had my own father. And he was absent. So that looked like no father in the home until my stepfather come along. But even then, it was like no father in the home. I remember one time in particular, we were riding, and you'll understand this. I'll talk about this in a little minute. We were riding one day, and I was talking to him, and I was just like, "Well, I thought that you would want to hear me as you being my dad." And he looked at me and he said, "I'm not your dad, I'm just a stepfather. So I have no say-so in your life." And I was 13 at the time. And I remember that crushed me because all this time I'm thinking, finally, I have a dad and someone in the home, And to hear that, it really definitely put a dent in me. But also later in life, I understood like he wasn't meaning I'm not your dad. He's just meaning like I don't have biological children. You know, it's just the way it came out. It did not resonate that way, if that makes any sense.
What was your relationship like with your mom then?
It wasn't much there. Um, like I said, I was in like growing up, I was in everything that you can imagine, and the support just wasn't there. Dealing with parents growing up in that era, I've learned that I guess because of how their parents were, have cultivated how they are. Um, and I am not the only one with that same story. So I've had people be able to identify. And some of the things that they identify with is our parents not being able to receive our truth, our parents not being able to be accountable for what they put us through, our parents not being able to identify and hear our trauma that they have put on us.
When did you become a mother?
I was 26. I conceived her in April. I remember in May, no, January, February, March, April, so March of 2012, I was like, I don't want no kids. I do not want no kids. I'm killing this auntie thing. Like, no kids. April comes, I'm pregnant. So I contact her dad, Bailey's dad, and he was like, oh, well, I thought you was sleeping with someone else anyway. And I'm like, what? And then he was just like, oh, well, it's not mine. And I'm like, what? And he just was rambling and he said, nothing, never mind. And I'm like, I'm going to call you back. And so I called my brother and he was just like, come over. And mind you, my brother is like my parental figure. And I just knew I was going to get a whooping, you know? And he circles the block and he's telling me my options. And he's like, well, you know, you can have the baby. This man you're not in a relationship with, so he doesn't have to be there. Like he's just basically telling me like because of the way you have gone about this and with you guys not being in a relationship or anything, he could do whatever he wants to. And if he don't want the baby, he don't have to have the baby. It's your choice in everything that you do at this moment. I'm just like, there's only one option. And that was for me to have my baby and no other option. But my option was how I was going to deal with it. How was I going to finance a baby? How was I going to be a single mom? Because my brother did not know the conversation that just took place right before, you know, he told me to come over, you know. I worked at City Gear and I was the manager there. And my customers bring me food, bring me all kinds of stuff. I was like, you know, the pregnant Beyonce, you know. So I got whatever I wanted. Pregnancy was great. I went in for a checkup and this was December 29th, that morning. I go in there and he preps me and everything, and they don't find a heartbeat. And let me rewind that. I see my sister there, and she's pregnant at the same time as me. And she was just like, oh, you must get the checkup too. I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, well, I'll come in your room. So her and her husband comes in the room. So they're actually in the room while I'm getting checked up on and stuff. And they couldn't find a heartbeat. And I'm just there and I'm like, just taking it all in because my mind hasn't gone haywire. And I'm just like, okay, so what are the next step? And he was just like, well, give us a second. Let me try to find it again. So they give me something. And it was just like, hopefully this will help. It didn't help. So then they turned me on my side, still no heartbeat. My sister's flipping out. They leave, and she comes up to my bed and she's like, Brittany, how do you feel? I don't know how to feel at this point. I'm just really working on logic. Like, I'm just listening to them and doing what they're asking me to do. And she's like, no, it's just me talking to you. How do you feel? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is foreign. I've never been through this. And she's just like, she's really like just, and she's pregnant too. So anxiety up times 3,000. And they come back in and they was like, we're going to have to take you. You're going to have the emergency C-section. We're going to have to take you. And I'm like, my mom's not here. And so I called my mom and I let her know what's going on. And he was just like, she got 3 minutes to be here because we got to take this baby. There's no heartbeat. There's no nothing. We can't see anything. So my sister, she's calling my mom repeatedly. My mom tells my sister, oh, everything's going to be all right. She's going to be okay. And my sister's like, no, you need to get here like now. So finally, after my sister convinced her, I'm just like, if y'all got to take me back, take me back. Now I'm having this C-section and I wake up during the C-section and I'm looking at everything and I see this blue curtain and I see a monitor over here where you can see all of my insides and everything. And I see my mom. So my mom was there. And I hear my doctor, his voice is panicked. But then there was another doctor, I can hear another voice. So I couldn't see my doctor because it was the blue curtain that was in front of me. So I can only see what's like right here and right here. And I hear my doctor say, is everything okay back there? Is everything okay back there? And I'm not knowing what's going on because I am in and out of anesthesia. And then I hear the cry and I'm still in and out. So there's just like no emotion, no nothing that I'm feeling. And then I remember my mom saying, oh, you're up. And she snatches the baby from whomever and she puts my daughter in my face. And I still hear my doctor saying, I still don't hear her cry. So at this time, my daughter is not crying, but she was crying. So I remember going back to sleep and then all was well. And I'm thinking that everything was all right with my child. And I was in the I was in the doctor's room in my post care room, and I'm like, I want to see my daughter, and it was like, oh, she's going to be in the NICU, and they were telling me how to basically take care of the surgical treatment and what I need to do while I'm there, and I'm like, yeah, but like when my sister had her baby, she was able to see her baby. I need to see my baby. And they was just very adamant that she's in the NICU. And I'm like, okay. So my cousin, she actually works from the hospital. She's like, have you seen Bailey? Have you seen Bailey? And I'm like, no, and I want to see her. And they was just like, she was just like, okay. And she goes away, and then she was just like, you'll be able to see her tomorrow. And I'm like, it just wasn't registering with me. And so tomorrow was the 30th. So this was all like kind of like overnight type of deal. And then my sister, she ended up having her baby. She ended up anxiety so much, she ended up going into labor. They ended up giving her my room and everything. It was crazy. So now we're on the 30th. And I'm like, okay, I need to see my child. So they tell me I had to wait. They kept on saying I had to wait. And now we're going into New Year's. So I didn't get to see her on the 30th, but I was able to see her it was like midnight of the 31st. It was like 11 something. They finally wheeled me down. So I didn't get to see her on the 29th other than what my mom had showed me. I didn't get to see her on the 30th. And here we are on the 31st. And I'm like, what is going on? You know? So they wheeled me down there. And I remember coming around and I'm ecstatic, so, and I'm like, oh, she must be asleep. I'm hearing this snore, this great big man snore. And I'm like, oh, she must be asleep. She must be knocked out. And they wheel me around and she's wide awake, but she's snoring like a grown man. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why is she snoring like that? And they're like, oh, well, she has tracheomalacia. And I'm like, what is that? And they was just like, it's a flap in the airway and she'll just grow out of it. And I'm like, yeah, but is she, like, I've never heard a baby sound like this. So I'm very panicked, and what are you all going to do about this? Like, I'm not understanding this. And I was excited. My brother was there, everything, so I got to spend the new year with my daughter, but I was still absolutely highly concerned about this grunt that she had going on just within her breathing. And I had went back up to my room, and then I have several cousins that work in the hospital, and my other cousin, she comes into my room and she was just like, I just saw Bailey and things ain't right. And I'm just like, I know, like, I know things aren't right. Like, what's going on? And she was like, you need to request the ears, nose, and throat doctor. You need to do all of these things. She's telling me what I need to do. So I'm requesting these things. And I requested it and I asked them, I said, hey, when you guys get there, please, well, before y'all get there, I would like to be there so that if there's any questions or concerns, I can ask these things, So I'm waiting for them to let me know when they get there. And she was like, oh, the ENT's already come. And I'm like, but how? Because I asked them to let me know before she gets there. I need to be there in case I need to ask any questions or they could tell me what's going on. They was just like, yeah, the ENT's already been there and she has tracheomalacia. Boom. And I'm just like, at this point, I don't know what to do. So it's time for us to leave the hospital. My brother had me come over to his house and set up everything, post-care because I'm in this by myself. Mind you, Bailey's dad he was through in and out the pregnancy, but he was stressing me out. And I was just like, look, here's all her doctor's appointments, everything. You could come if you want to, but this isn't, he was really stressing me out. And then I had let him know things that were going on. He drummed for churches. And he was just like, I'll pray for her. So that's a whole nother ball game. But my brother we went over to his house and I get my baby home and she's still making this noise. Well, this time I'm feeding her and all of a sudden she stops breathing. She stops breathing and she turns so blue and I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on? And I'm freaking out and I'm trying to call the ambulance and I'm trying to call the NICU and I'm trying to see what's going on because my child is like dead right here in my arms. And the ambulance come and by then she catches her breath and I'm like, what is this? And what exactly happened was, have you ever seen anybody choke to death? Or a newborn choked to death, and it's the restriction. It was, and she couldn't breathe. And so the ambulance come, and it was like, oh, she's fine. And I'm like, and it's like on her chart, she has tracheomalacia. She'll grow out of it. And I'm like, this is not fine. This is not fine at all. So everything, we ended up being regulated. I ended up getting in touch with the NICU. And they're like giving me the runaround. They're giving me the runaround. And I get in touch with her, my OBGYN, and he was just like, have you ever has she seen a heart doctor or anything? He's like, because this isn't normal. And I'm like, no. So he was just like, I'm going to refer you. So he referenced, and they had, mind you, this is January because we passed the new year. They made her an appointment for May 7th. And I'm like, that's too long. That's way too long. And I'm calling every single day because they told me that if there's a cancellation, then I can get in there. She's still having these, what I call episodes. So what's happening is she's choking. You can literally, she could just be sitting there and she's choking and you can't really get her to calm down. But one of the things that I realized that if I hold her against my chest and she hears my breathing, she can follow it. So the recovery time became better. So it's like, she's choking. She hear me just breathe. And I try to calm myself because I noticed that when I panicked, she panicked. So what that looked like is she's choking. She can't catch her breath. I'm panicking and she can't come out of it. But I learned that I noticed that when I calm down, it's easier for her to recover, And so I would do that. And I'm calling every day for the heart doctor. And the lady finally, it's literally been probably about 3 weeks now. It's scary every single day because I don't know if she's going to live or die. This is when I did not like my brother at all. I can honestly sit there and say, I did not like him because he was telling me that I wasn't trying hard enough to see what was going on with her, and then I wasn't doing enough, and I just was not enough. And as a mom having a baby and not understanding what's going on, and I'm having to care for her every second of every day, and I'm also trying to figure out what's going on with her, and I'm calling all of these people, and for the one person that means the world to you tell you you're not doing enough. And I'm like, you call them, you help me, because you telling me that I'm not doing enough. If this isn't enough, then help me. This is one of the reasons why I absolutely do not care for people who delivers problems and identify problems without solutions. And because it leaves you without a solution, and it leaves you just as misconstrued as you were, but emotionally drained, So he's like, you're not doing enough. So I'm calling every day, every second, every minute, trying to get this cancellation so I can see what's going on with her. And we ended up, the lady, she picks up the phone, and I've heard this voice before. And she's like, well, Mom, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know what to do because I feel like my baby's going to die. And no one is helping me. And I just want to make sure that she's all right. And my OBGYN suggested that I call you guys so that she can get checked out and stuff. And she was just like, well, I've been on vacation, but you was calling back to back before I went on vacation, and here you are still calling. And she was just like, don't tell anybody that I told you this, but I'm gonna put you in, and I just need you to be here at this time, and I need you to bring your baby up here, and you're gonna have to sit, but I'm gonna make sure this doctor sees you. And I just was, I was ecstatic, I was emotional, I was crying. I'm just like, oh my God. So I get there and I'm elated, but the heart doctor, she was crying so much that he couldn't really tell what was going on with her because he couldn't get her to calm down to see everything that was going on within her body because everything was alert. But he said it could be two things. It could very well be tracheomalacia, which is something that she will have to grow out of, or it could be a double aortic arch, which is basically when your your aorta, circles around your trachea, and your airway, causing anything to get clogged in there. And he was like, and that we can fix. Um, I'm all right with this because we got the best of two. He was like, so I'm going to give you another date of next week to come back in here, and hopefully she'll be calmed down so I can really truly see. And I'm like, all right. And this day I'm happy because I finally got in there. I know I like the logics I work in. I have some things to research. I'm okay for the moment. Mind you, I'm also still working, okay? So I'm still managing the store. I told my sister, I was like, I remember, I was like, I called her, I was like, can you keep Bailey while I go make the schedule and I'll come right back? And she's like, yeah. And so she understands, like, I didn't let anybody keep her. But she also understands, like, what we got to do to get her to calm down because she's been around. And I had some family members to help me as well. Like, they really took us in, and it's not like we were homeless or anything. It's just like they was just making sure we was good. Like, at this point, I think my whole family life just stopped, okay? Because we all trying to figure out what's going on, and we've never experienced this with any of the kids prior, healthy babies. And so this particular day, so I dropped Bailey off to my sister, and I pulled out the driveway. I hadn't even made it. I wasn't even 2 minutes away. And she calls me and she's panicking. And she's like, Brittany, come back, come back. Something is wrong. I've never seen her like this. Come back. So I turn around and I'm just like, forget that schedule. I turn around and I pull up and I see my sister is on the floor, her door is open, and there's Bailey on the floor, and my daughter is giving her CPR. And I'm like, what? Like, she was as blue as the sky and she was lifeless. And my sister is on the phone she's on the phone with the ambulance, and I'm I just see a lifeless body and she's bleeding out of her ears, and she's like, it was just crazy. And I went and I lift up her arm and it just flopped back down, and I lost my mind. And I see my niece, I have an older niece and my nephew, and she's pulling him and she's like, come on, Trey. And she's pulling him back in the room. And it was she was so emotional just seeing my niece's face, and my sister's giving my baby CPR, and it was just an whole emotional. My nephew's crying, and I pick up Bailey. I pick her up and I put her in my arms, and I'm just like, you just got to come through. Like, you got to come through. And I'm just right there, and there's nothing to my child. Like, she was not there. And my sister's like, I gotta keep giving her CPR. And I'm just like, I gotta give me my baby, and I just remember, I'm just like, just come back. And it was like in a whole moment of span, is like when I said that, she just opened up her eyes. And by then I can see the lights of the paramedics, and the fire department came first. I see those lights, and they come and they're trying to take her out of my arms. And there was no way, absolutely no way I was giving anybody her. And they trying to check her vitals, and they're not feeling her heartbeat, but her eyes are open. And they're like, she's gonna be okay, mom. And she was like, we got to get her, some oxygen. And the ambulance pull up and they take us out there, and they literally hooking everything up while she's in my arms. And we're going down the street, and all of a sudden they hit the bump. There was a speed hump, and when they hit the bump, her oxygen, it started rising, and like everything just started coming back to normal. And I'm in the hospital with her, and I'm like, this is just ain't right. This is not right. And I'm not leaving this hospital until y'all tell me what is wrong with my baby, because if y'all saying she's gonna grow out of this ain't it. And I'm there, and we're there for days in on out, and they doing all types of testing on her because they don't know. They don't know what's going on with her. And then I received a phone call. And apparently my sister, we had the same OBGYN, had went to his office and he asked about her. And he was very specific as to why he asked. So she had told him that Bailey was in the hospital. And he calls me and he was like, I saw your sister and she said you all were in the hospital. And he was just like, he was just like, I don't know if they told you this, but when you first gave birth to her, she was not alive. She was not alive. And it was their responsibility to tell you that, not mine. And he was like, once I give birth to the baby, when the baby is in my hands, that is my patient. When I pass the baby off to the doctor, the other doctor, it is no longer my patient. And he was like, and I kept on trying to ask this man what was going on with the baby, and he refused to answer me. And he was like, but there are some things that I need you to check for, because if these things are wrong with him, we're going to sue his ass. And he was like, and I'm going to assist you with this, because he would not let me near that baby. And he was just like, and it's not about ego. He was like, it's about saving a life. And that person was not in the right mindset space. And he was just like, do you have a pen and paper? And I need you to write these things down. And I was writing these things down. I have no clue what these things are. And he was like, that's okay. You're going to ask the doctors that are working with you about these things. And you check them off as they give you an answer. And I need to know their answers. And there are some doctors that owe me a favor. And I'm going to send them over there to your baby. And, I'm still in disarray. Bailey, she's hooked up to every machine possible. And very much alive, though. Very much alive. As long as I could see her, I was good. And he was like, I'm going to send these doctors over. So the next morning, they have the residential doctors. They'll come, like a group of 4. There was literally 10 doctors there. And all these doctors were crossing off they T's and dotting their I's. And they was letting me know that this specific doctor sent them. And they're going to make sure that my baby's okay. And I'm like, this is nothing but God. Like, this is nothing but God. And she had the biggest team ever. And they were still doing all of these tests on her. And I remember it's been a week. And my mom, she comes to visit, and my sister, they come. And I had not been in anybody's shower. I still got on the same clothes that I did when they first took her. I remember my sister coming there and was like, Britt, you stink. You have to, take care of yourself in this process. But my whole thing was right there. And mind you, Bailey kept getting in trouble because Bailey didn't like the monitors. And she would snatch them off and she would just do the most. And so they had Pampers on her hands and they restricted her. And I absolutely hate seeing her like that. It was so cringy. It's like, I don't want to see her strapped down like that, And the testing that they did, it was very mindful, but everything was out of my hands. Not being able to be in control when you have been able to be in control your whole life is undeniably the worst feeling of a person who has control issues. It's not the best space to be in. But what I could control is everything that these doctors are saying was running through my mind, and I was inhaling any knowledge of anything that they had to say. And I knew exactly what he said, they said, what could possibly happen. It was channeling, because that's the only thing I could do was relay information. And they was like, okay, we figured out the problem. She has a double aortic arch. And I'm like, oh, I know what that is. That means y'all can fix that. And they're like, yes. But the thing about it is that we can't fix indentations. So we can't put a stent in there, which will allow her to breathe better. So she will still have that dent and it will not, it should be okay. She should be all right, but it's still going to be tight. So I'm like, okay. And I met this, so they end up doing a heart surgery. And I'm thinking she's going to have an open heart. And I'm like, is there any other way to get to the heart than to go through her chest? And they was like, yes. So they went through her back, and they were able to rewire some things. So what they ended up rewiring was it was her right aorta that circled around her trachea. So they rewired it to the left. So she's only operating through the left. So I'm thinking that all is well. We went home. She's well, and she was not. I remember getting her dressed. I fed her, put her in her crib. I had laid her there and she just looked so peaceful. I got my clothes and I remember going into the living room and something in my mind just told me to go check on her again. And I checked on her and she was lifeless. Mind you, before I left the hospital, I told them I need help saving my child and I need to learn how to do CPR. I need to learn anything that had to do with saving her life because I don't want to be in a position as to where I cannot do that. And they didn't have any classes. So they end up making a class specifically for me. And so I learned how to do CPR. Fast forward, she's lifeless in her crib. Once again, blue as the sky, except for this time, she's has her arms like this and it just casket. That's all I could see. And I'm flipping out and I'm like, oh my God. Like, and I grab her up and I start to perform CPR. But as I'm performing CPR, I can't find my phone to call for help. And I just remember I'm looking and I'm trying to do this. And I'm like, this isn't working. And I'm like, she's not coming back to me. And I'm like carrying her at this point and I'm trying to look for my phone, but everything is super fast and I'm in a panic state. And then I looked down and I had set her on my phone when I was giving her CPR. So I called the ambulance and I'm giving her CPR and then they come upstairs. The fire department comes again and they come with oxygen and everything. And when he gets there, she comes back. But this time was very weird. So he's checking her vitals. No vital, no nothing. She's wide awake. She's looking. And she smiles. And he's looking and he's like very concerned. And he was just like, I'm not, he's talking to the other firefighter. And he's like, this is weird. He was just like, I'm not getting a heartbeat. And the other one's like, he's looking and he's like, I'm not getting any oxygen. There's no oxygen. There's no, they take her and the ambulance is there and they looking at her vitals. And mind you, my daughter is smiling at us. She's literally smiling, but there is no oxygen. There's no heartbeat. There's nothing. And we're in there. And then the man that was in the ambulance, still nothing. He's like, I'm not receiving nothing. And he's panicked. And then she grabs his hand. She grabs his hand, his finger, and wouldn't let go. And he's nervous. And I can see him being scared all on his face. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like watching the monitor and watching her, watching him. And there's nothing on this monitor. And he's like, I don't know what to do. So he taps on the what you call it, and the lady comes back there and she's like nothing. And they rehook everything and she's still smiling and she's still holding on to his finger. And then he's just, the lady, she was just like, maybe it's the machine. So instead of them unhooking her again, they unhook the machine, hook it back up. And my heart is just fluttering and I'm not understanding because she's smiling, she's gripping, everything is going on and they're not getting anything. And finally she just, and everything just pops up like nothing ever happened. And he's like, we're taking her in. We can't have any chances. We're taking her in. And she literally held his finger the whole time, like she never let go. So we get there, and I'm like, this is not supposed to happen. Y'all know, y'all fixed her. Like, this isn't normal. And that night, as we're in the hospital, there was a doctor. She comes in there and she was like, well, what's going on, Mom? And I was just like, she's still having these episodes. And this time there was no episode, but, she's like, okay, well, I have to see what's going on with her in order to understand. And I'm just like, well, she's had heart surgery and everything. And she was like, she's so cute, And then that evening we're there and Bailey goes into one of her episodes while the doctor was talking to me. And this doctor flips out. She's never seen anything like she flips out so bad. She's trying to get out the door, but she forgets to press the exit button. So she runs directly into the door and she jets out of there screaming for help. And she's like, she can't explain what she just saw. And I remember probably like maybe 30 minutes, a whole team of doctors come. And this lady she was no longer my doctor. She told me, she was like, it was nice meeting you guys. This is going to be your new doctor, and these doctors are going to take care of you. And she's crying. She's crying to me, and she's just hysterical. And I'm like, what is the problem? I'm not understanding why you can't be our doctor. And she was just like, I just can't. And she just walks out. So I already knew, like, she probably felt like there was nothing she could do for my child. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, this isn't going to get any better. And I remember Bailey being in the hospital, and I had to leave. And I broke down. And I had very, very impure thoughts because I'm like, nobody should struggle this much. And I'm praying, and I'm just like, something has to end, and she does not need to go through this. This is just too much for anyone to bear, and I'm praying. I remember going down the street, and then I received a phone call from my OBGYN, and he was like, turn around and go back to the hospital. And he was just like, and I'll meet you there. And he was there, and he was front row center. And he was just like, I'm not giving a list. This is everything we're going to do. And it come to find out she ended up having acid reflux. At an infant's worst, they say the acid reflux is at a 10%. Hers was at a 14%. And she just had this heart surgery, and her indentation is still there. So no matter if it was air trying to get through there, no matter if it was milk from her bottle, no matter what it was getting lodged in her throat. And that's why she was choking to death. And that's what the problem was. And her cardiologist was there because now she has a cardiologist because she had heart surgery. And I asked him, I said, may I ask you a question? And he was like, yeah. And I said, when she was first born, if the ENT had done a scopinoscopy, in which they were supposed to do, would they have been able to tell all of this was going on? He said, if the ENT would have done their job, you would not be here right now because they wouldn't have been able to get the scope down her throat to do it. And I'm just like so emotional all over again because it only took one time for them to just do their job. And as a Black mom, I hear about these stories of them overlooking us and not taking our matters into consideration and just knowing that they're so right and being so wrong at the same time. And now that I understood, everything just came. I understood why they didn't call me because it didn't happen. They did not do what they were supposed to do. And here we are, not once, not twice, but 3 times. My child has died on me. And by the grace of God, she's still here. And he was just like, I set up appointments. And he was like, because I don't want to take you back there. We need to look forward. My OBGYN, like he literally saved my child, because I'm pretty sure that if it had not been for him, I wouldn't have a child to this day. After her heart surgery, she ended up having a throat surgery because they had a lump in her throat and it ended up being benign. So that was a wonderful thing. When did I become a mom? I became a mom when I realized that going through some things and not being able to control some things and having to let go and let God do his thing, and being able to understand your child, their needs, not their wants, but essentially their needs, and being able to meet them there, and understanding nothing is in your control. Being a mom, becoming a mom is vital, life-threatening. We always hear about the things in which we endure during pregnancy, or almost dying giving birth, but no one talks about the aftermath and the things that they go through afterwards, and being able to navigate within those uncomfortable space where you no longer exist. Your existence is in your child. And seeing that and enduring all that I've endured, and being able to take myself out of the whole equation for the betterment of my child, and my thoughts and what I could no longer existed, that's when I became a mother. That's when I became a woman. My daughter is 12, and she is doing everything a 12-year-old could be doing, plus more. She is very exceptional, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for her. She has met so many milestones that your average 12-year-old wouldn't have ever, you wouldn't even fathom. But also within that, she is a very mature 12-year-old. And I have to understand that although she makes mature decisions, she still navigates as a 12-year-old. So separating the two has been very tasking, because you get to those points where, like, why would you do that? But then realize too, is because you thought you was talking to this grown lady this whole time, but she's only 12. So she's doing 12-year-old things. Health problems. She suffers from eczema, and I'll take that any day over what she has been through.